Mientras tanto, está hablando en estos momentos la presidenta de la Comisión Europea, Ursula Von Der Leyen. Vamos a conectar ahora mismo con ella porque evidentemente está hablando en el marco de la presidencia sueca, ya saben, presidencia rotativa de la Unión Europea. Después de los suecos vendremos nosotros los españoles. Así que vamos a escuchar a Ursula Von Der Leyen porque está dejando algunos mensajes bastante interesantes. Dice que están colaborando en estos momentos para reducir los efectos negativos de la ley de reducción de la inflación en Europa. Atención, ley de reducción de la inflación relativa a Estados Unidos, y está hablando también sobre el diseño de una reforma en el mercado eléctrico en Europa.
Yes, and now there is some time for some questions. We can start with the Financial Times.
Thanks. Sam Fleming from the Financial Times. Two questions, both of them addressed to both the President and Prime Minister. First one, on the Inflation Reduction Act earlier this week, Alexander De Croo said he was seeing aggressive signs that America is trying to woo investment, lure over investment using IRA. I wondered if you, either of you had seen evidence of these aggressive attempts he talks about, and whether this has been raised with the administration, and whether it does not indicate that any outcome from the task force is likely to be rather limited. Second question, also related to IRA and the state aid rules, Madam President, that you referred to. This is you've had a number of downgrades to the state aid rules, repeated relaxations of the state aid rules, calling them temporary. But does this not amount to a rather durable downgrade to level playing field protections and member states with limited fiscal space right to be concerned by what they see? Thank you.
Would you mind starting? Or?
Okay, yes. So I've always said that the Inflation Reduction Act, first of all, is something positive. It is great that our American friends are now heavily investing in their climate agenda. We've started earlier. As you know, the European Green Deal is not only a political and policy program, but it's also an investment program, mainly Next Generation EU, with a strong emphasis on the green transition. So this is positive, and I really welcome that. There are some parts in the IRA that have a negative impact on the level playing field between us and the United States. And indeed, we are in close cooperation with the United States to mitigate that. And therefore, we are working on the agreement with the United States, looking at specifically, for example, the electric vehicles, and to find solutions to have a similar treatment like Mexico and Canada, what the approach of the IRA is concerned. But for us it's also important, as I said, it's good that the United States invest in green tech, clean tech. For us it's important that we are able to give a very strong and reassuring and positive answer to all those who invest in clean tech in the European Union. And this is two sides of the coin, as I said.
Bueno, muy importante esto porque le han preguntado a Ursula Von Der Leyen por la ley de reducción de inflación de Estados Unidos, IRA, por sus siglas en inglés, Inflation Reduction Act, y lo que está diciendo en estos momentos Ursula Von Der Leyen es que han iniciado reuniones con Estados Unidos para calibrar cuál podría ser el impacto que recibiría Europa con motivo de estas subvenciones que otorga ese plan de ley de reducción de inflación de Estados Unidos hacia las compañías locales. Dice que algunas partes de esta ley de reducción de inflación de Estados Unidos tienen un impacto negativo entre Europa y Estados Unidos, pero que actualmente siguen en reuniones bilaterales cooperando para poder mitigar esos efectos negativos. Dice Ursula Von Der Leyen que esto ha sido quizás lo más importante, que esperan obtener algún tipo de acuerdo específico para encontrar soluciones y tener un trato similar al que tienen México y Canadá a la hora de hacer negociaciones con Estados Unidos en materia de acuerdos empresariales o del trato empresarial que puedan tener las compañías de estos dos países. Vamos a seguir escuchando.
The overall competitiveness topic is broader than that. The agenda is also broader than that. But at the moment being, this is a very specific focus where we have to be precise and fast in our response.
If I may just briefly underlining, of course, that it's basically very good that the US is back on on a common climate agenda, taking part of that, this very global discussion and doing their part. It's simply impossible to fight climate change if big countries like the US is simply not with us. So that's basically very good. You also have to recognize and acknowledge the fact that this is to a big part, you can discuss to how big part, but it is a US response also to what China has been doing for quite a long time and creating unlevel playing fields. And I think that is a response, that is a question that also in many European countries and the EU itself has a good reason to discuss. Thirdly, underlining mitigating negative consequences, of course. We cannot accept that the consequence of this would be covered and bared by primarily European countries and companies. And therefore, for acting on what the US is doing at the same time as these negotiated discussions with the White House are very, very important. That leads me to the conclusion that we have to do things, we have to act, we have to improve the chances for European companies to have a level playing field, but we need to do that based on facts and figures, a good analysis on what could happen otherwise, what consequences may change regulations within the European Union have, good consequences of course, but also risky consequences. And finally, and I'd like to stress that because everybody agrees, but it's always complicated, start a long-term discussion as well on long-term competitiveness. This is not a sudden happening. European productivity and European competitiveness has lagged behind US and many Asian countries for quite a long time. And we need to start a real discussion on how to improve productivity, how to enhance competitiveness, and how to attract more companies based on our own capabilities. And not based on long-term state aid rules, of course. So,
bueno, está hablando en estos momentos el primer ministro sueco, como decimos, Suecia, que tiene ya esa presidencia rotativa de la Unión Europea, es Ulf Kristersson. Bueno, se apoyaba en las palabras de Ursula Von Der Leyen a la hora de hablar de mitigar esas consecuencias negativas de la ley de reducción de inflación de Estados Unidos. Dice que hay que actuar, decía, tenemos que hacer cosas, mejorar las oportunidades de nuestras empresas europeas, pero hacerlo sobre análisis, sobre estadísticas que apoyen esas necesidades, y hablaba de la necesidad de empezar una conversación sobre la competitividad de las compañías españolas a largo plazo. Seguimos escuchando.
During half year of your presidency, and Madam President, Ukraine right now is implementing conditions linked to candidate status. Can we expect that the EU and Ukraine can enter into membership negotiation already in this year? And what additional condition can be put it for this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as Ukraine knows, and as the Commission knows, and as the other European Union country knows, Sweden is very committed to Ukraine to eventually become a EU country, in accordance, of course, with the rules that apply for that. Of course, we are also impressed by the work that Ukraine is doing. Now there is a schedule for this. There will be an assessment, formal assessment during fall. There are criteria for that. We know that the Ukrainian government is working with all the reforms, and there will be a process for reporting back the results of that. So I look very positively, but there is a schedule, and all countries need to agree on that. There is also an agreement of some kind of oral reporting back during the springtime, just to report back how things are developing, basically. So I think there is a very welcoming attitude, and things are doing in a correct order, basically. Ursula.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the accession process is a process, so step after step has to be taken. And for us now, the next important point is, or milestone, is the enlargement report in fall, because it will mirror the progress each and every candidate country that wants to join the European Union has made since the beginning of the year. Ukraine is impressively ambitious and strong and fast in delivery. That's very good. To support that process, the college is visiting Ukraine in the beginning of February. We will have a college-to-government meeting. And we have just looked briefly through the amount of files that we have in common where we are working on. It's about 18 to 20 different files we are already working on with the Ukrainian government. So this will be a very good point to deepen and intensify the different topics that are on our agenda. And it shows how broad our agenda is. For us, it's important to progress with as much high quality and, of course, speed and ambition as possible together with the Ukrainian government, so that in fall the enlargement report will reflect all that, and that, of course, then brings, hopefully, interesting and positive decisions of the Council.
The Swedish TT.
Ursula Von Der Leyen ahora hablaba de la posibilidad de esa adhesión a la Unión Europea de Ucrania. Insiste Ursula Von Der Leyen en que Ucrania es un país ambicioso, que es importante progresar en esos pasos hacia esa dirección. Sin embargo, decía, bueno, todo esto lo vamos a validar a través de un informe. Si en ese informe se refleja evidentemente esa capacidad de ambición, evolución positiva por parte del país, pues todo esto va a ser lo que va a ser tenido en cuenta de cara a valorar ese proceso y que siga en adelante, aunque bien sabemos que ese proceso también está supeditado a la victoria de Ucrania en el conflicto bélico. Vamos a seguir escuchando.
People try to show their views on the Swedish NATO accession through a disgusting way of portraying President Erdogan in almost something looking like an execution. That is bad in every sense. På svenska så säger jag att det är avskyvärt. Jag tror varje land skulle tycka att det var en avskyvärd handling att visa upp något som ska föreställa närmast en avrättning av en utländsk ledare. Inte minst i ett land som 2 gånger har varit utsatt för mord på mycket ledande politiker, så finns det skäl att ta det på extremt stort allvar. Det undersöks ju nu också på rätt sätt. Min andra kommentar, det här är ett sabotage mot den svenska och finska ansökan att bli NATO-medlemmar. Uttryckliga syftet att förhindra detta. Jag förstår.
Bueno, hemos tenido ahí cambio de idioma. El primer ministro sueco está ahora mismo otorgando una respuesta en su propio idioma. Recordemos que también se está hablando ahora mismo de la adhesión a la OTAN por parte de Suecia, también de Finlandia. Evidentemente ahora también le están preguntando por este tema, aunque sí que es cierto que en estos últimos días hemos visto ese rifirrafe entre Suecia y Turquía. Suecia acusando sobre todo a Turquía de exigirle medidas imposibles para poder ingresar a la OTAN y de, pues como el gobierno sueco insiste en que ahora mismo lo que se quieren son, las exigencias son cosas que no pueden otorgar en ningún caso. Lo decía el primer ministro sueco, Ulf Kristersson, decía que el gobierno turco estaba imponiendo una serie de demandas que Suecia no puede ni quiere cumplir. Ahora la decisión, por tanto, recae sobre los turcos. Gran parte del peso en estos instantes recae sobre ellos y vamos, por supuesto, a seguir asistiendo a los avances en todo este proceso. Seguimos escuchando.
Act is mentioning. And a second question is, today the Polish lower house of the Polish Parliament passed a law that the ruling Polish party hopes will unblock billions of EU funds for Poland. My question is, are they right? Will the Commission now be ready to unblock the funds, or will you wait for the passage of the bill through the Senate and amendments there? Thank you.
Perhaps the second question first. So in the very end, the law has to be agreed on, so it has to pass the second chamber, and then we can analyze the final law, the one that is agreed, the Polish Parliament agreed upon. And you know, it is important we have a contract, Next Generation EU, written down the milestones that have to be reached. It's public, it's visible for everybody. So the changes have to be implemented in a law that then would lead to the disbursement of funding under Next Generation EU. But first of all, the implementation and the legal solutions have to be found by Poland itself. On the Inflation Reduction Act, $369 billion is an impressive amount. We should not forget that Next Generation EU, 37% of Next Generation EU are supposed and are dedicated to the green transition. That is a sum, if you look into the cohesion funds too and the Just Transition Fund, that exceeds that. So we do already, and we have already, started this massive investment in the clean transition, and it is good that the United States now do it too. What is important for us, and I want to repeat that again, is that with the clean tech sector and all its innovative power that it has, we have a level playing field. We want to compete on quality. That's important. We do not want to compete on subsidies, but on quality. And therefore, the funding element for us is important, first of all, to have the needs assessment so that we have facts and figures on what exactly is the definition of the clean tech sector, what exactly is the impact, and where do we have to have the targeted support of the public European funding. And then there are different possibilities to create such a funding, but this is something we're still discussing. And first things first, the needs assessment then will show the need for the European funding that we are looking into.
Okay.
That was all for today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Vamos a aprovechar un poco para resumir en esa comparecencia entre el primer ministro sueco y la presidenta de la Comisión Europea. Se han tocado algunos temas importantes. Ahora Ursula Von Der Leyen estaba hablando del sector de las clean tech, de las tecnologías limpias. Decía que Europa quiere competir en calidad, pero que sobre todo en estos momentos hay que definir qué es lo que se entiende por una tecnología limpia, que hay diferentes posibilidades de crear ese entorno y sobre todo impulsarlo a través de las inversiones. Pero recordemos, entre los principales mensajes que rescatamos de esta comparecencia, por un lado, el mensaje sobre la reforma energética en Europa. Dice Ursula Von Der Leyen que esta primavera Europa propondrá una reforma del diseño del mercado eléctrico para toda la Unión Europea. Pero además también ha hablado de la ley de reducción de inflación en Estados Unidos, que tiene una mella, un impacto importante en Europa. ¿Por qué? Pues porque estamos hablando de una ley que proporciona subvenciones a las compañías estadounidenses en detrimento de aquellas compañías extranjeras. Dice Ursula Von Der Leyen que están colaborando para reducir los efectos negativos de esta ley de reducción de inflación. Dice que se han comenzado reuniones con las partes estadounidenses, pero que hay que tener en cuenta cuáles son los impactos negativos que supone esta ley a nivel europeo, que están en conversaciones, en comparación para poder mitigarlos, que esperan llegar a un acuerdo específico para encontrar soluciones, y hablaba de la posibilidad de que Europa en su conjunto pueda tener un trato similar al que tienen México y Canadá en estos momentos en materia de acuerdos empresariales o de intercambio con Estados Unidos. Han insistido ambos en la necesidad de mitigar esas consecuencias negativas, de actuar, pero sobre todo empezar una conversación sobre la competitividad de las empresas europeas a largo plazo. Estos serían algunos de los principales temas, como decimos, que se han abordado. Nos quedamos, por tanto, con todos ellos y, por supuesto, dispuestos a analizar todas sus implicaciones. Y a continuación, en materia energética, vamos a posar también